Welcome to Coronavirus The Rundown. I'm Chris Stewart. Each day, we showcase how communities are taking on coronavirus. We also break down the rush of headlines and today, new jobs numbers. The Labor Department says 1.5 million people filed new unemployment claims in the first week of June. Last week's numbers show claims are still going down, but are still historically high. The number of continued claims went down slightly. Analysts say that could reflect more people going back to work as states reopen. New voter registration is taking a hit because of the pandemic. It was down 70% in April compared to April of 2016. That's according to a new nonpartisan group's report. The report says registration was up compared to 2016 until stay-at-home orders started in March. It is easy to check your voting status and register online. Go to usa.gov/voting. Register to vote is right at the top of the page. A historic first in the U.S. A woman whose lungs were damaged by coronavirus has a new set of lungs. Surgeons from Chicago successfully did the transplant. The patient was in her 20s and on a ventilator and other support for almost 2 months. Doctors say the new lungs are healthy and that they're keeping her on a ventilator while she recovers. We mentioned the new weekly unemployment numbers. Alicia Nieves is looking at how recent numbers break down.
For the past 2.5 months, millions of people with a peak of 6.9 million have filed for unemployment each week. The Department of Labor just released last week's jobless claims report showing another 1.5 million people filed for unemployment. Yet the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS's monthly report, showed the country's unemployment rate declined from April to May.
And I think myself and many other analysts felt that this report was going to be the report we would see next month.
William Rogers, an economist and professor of public policy at Rutgers University, is just one of many experts surprised by the unemployment rate, since the weekly jobless numbers don't quite add up to BLS's report.
BLS had noted that the unemployment rate, if they had included or adjusted for how people had made or had answered their questions, you would have an unemployment rate that was about 16%.
While BLS acknowledges a miscategorization of workers that may have led to a lower unemployment rate reported, analysts and economists still have concerns about this month's unemployment report because including adjustments, it still showed a decline in unemployment for white Americans, but an increase in unemployment for those in the Black or African American community.
African Americans and other Latinos and other groups, especially African Americans, they're the first ones to be fired when there's a recession, and then they're the last ones to be hired when there's a recovery.
The unemployment rate in minority communities is particularly notable now, given continued protest and frustration around the country over racial disparities, institutionalized racism, and discrimination.
We have the great chance of a continued growing income inequality, which has led to instability, which has led to the visceral response, the reaction that we've seen to the murder of George Floyd.
Right now in Congress, the unemployment rate and report are being used to decide key funding, particularly whether or not to have a second round of stimulus checks and whether or not to extend the federal government's $600 PUA assistance for those who are on unemployment. Now, Republicans are citing the declining rate initially reported as a reason why both are no longer needed, while Democrats cite the miscategorization and the disparities in the report as indicators that many Americans may still need help. I'm Alicia Nieves reporting.
Alicia, thank you. Now, with more time being at home these days, well, people are changing their eating habits. According to data from Nielsen, people in the U.S. spent more than $15 billion on frozen food, and that's just between March and May. That is nearly double what we spent during that same time frame last year. Nestle says at first, people were buying comfort foods and products that they were familiar with. We're talking like frozen lasagna, Hot Pockets. Then people started buying more nutritious foods. Frozen food does get a bad rap for not being healthy, but doctors say finding nutritious options isn't that hard. Now, before you head to the grocery store, make a list of frozen foods that you will want, then check out the nutrition label. The important things to watch for: calories, fat, sodium, serving size. And if you find the serving sizes are too small, that can be an easy fix.
If there's a frozen meal you like, add some more frozen vegetables onto it to add fiber into it, which sometimes is missing. Also, it's easy to add a frozen protein, an animal protein in particular, and those can help round out the meals in a healthful way.
Frozen veggies and fruits are just as good as fresh ones. Now, they're picked at the height of their ripeness. None of the nutrients are lost in the freezing and unthawing process. Experts say it is also okay to buy indulgent frozen foods as long as you're just not eating them every single day. Now, it wasn't long ago governments were fighting about having enough ventilators, and that's why the story of how people from all over the world came together to make a ventilator for a boy born with a rare condition is a story that is worth telling. Lindsay Boach introducing us to a group who saved a boy's life.
Hi, hola Wilson. Hola.
Little Wilson will be 18 months old next week. An age half of kids with centronuclear myopathy don't get to see.
At the beginning, they didn't get any diagnosis, so it was 5 months till they got the diagnosis, and at the first month, it was very uncertain what's going to happen.
These children are born very weak. The majority of them do not breathe spontaneously on their own. They cannot eat orally. They cannot sit up on their own.
Which means they need a ventilator, something that just a few weeks ago was in short supply in the U.S. and nearly impossible to find in Wilson's home country of Ecuador. Allison Fraze's son Joshua was born with a type of CNM in 1995. He passed away 15 years later. Since then, she started an equipment exchange program.
And that's the first family that we have in Ecuador because normally the children there with this kind of diseases, they unfortunately they don't survive because there's no equipment.
Former Ecuadorian Jen Bilbao started a similar nonprofit in Germany, and after posting information on the condition online in Spanish, Wilson's parents had hope that they could get help.
She was very desperate because she thought she's gonna be at the hospital her whole life.
So Jen contacted Allison in the U.S.
I knew I had a ventilator from, unfortunately, a child, actually a young man that had passed this year. And I reached out to that mom. She said, absolutely, you can have it.
That ventilator from a family in Utah, the plug, connectors, and other parts from another family in Utah, and the humidifier from a family in Texas. All of those things were shipped to Jen's brother, who still lives in Ecuador, to bring to the family. For Wilson's parents, this gift is more than just a medical device.
So it was not only a breath for their child, but a breath for them because they were, they didn't know what to do. And to know that somebody's going to help, it was like, very peaceful.
Several people from all across the world in a crisis of their own, helping to save a little boy's life they've never met. I'm Lindsay Boach reporting.
Lindsay, thank you. Now, we probably don't have to tell you that groceries are more expensive these days, the impact it's expected to have on weekly sales, and how to save money on your next trip. Plus, we'll introduce you to the boxer fighting COVID in New York City. Next.
Ashley Home Store. This is home.
In some areas, they may be the only neighborhood market offering fresh fruits and vegetables, but farmers markets are under financial strain because of COVID-19. And as Maya Rodriguez explains, some are hoping for government relief in the next stimulus bill.
Hi, how are you guys?
Summer may not officially start for a few more weeks, but a different season is now in full swing.
This is real good.
Farmers market season.
Our season is April through September.
Tracy Richter oversees this farmers market in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Just when it was about to open this year, the coronavirus pandemic sprouted up, forcing a temporary closure and then requiring changes to comply with social distancing.
We had them set up booths with an entrance and an exit So only one way in, one way out. We restricted the number of shoppers they could have in those booths to 2.
Normally there'd be 45 vendors here at the farmers market, but they've had to reduce that number down to 10 because of the coronavirus. They're slowly trying to get back to normal, though, and plan to add 10 more next week.
Richter is lucky. The local municipality funds this market, but for other market operators around the country, the financial picture is much more dire.
For them, this is a very challenging situation.
Ben Feldman is with the Farmers Market Coalition. He says coronavirus relief funds have bypassed these nonprofit markets at a time when operators are having to limit the number of vendors and shoppers and spend additional money on virus-related expenses.
Unfortunately, much of the relief efforts to date have left farmers market operators out of the equation, even as there have been direct payments from many businesses.
Now, some are in danger of closing, nearly 20% in California alone. Feldman says the next coronavirus stimulus bill needs to include these markets, which are often a crucial food source and livelihood.
If these farmers markets aren't able to remain in business, then farmers and consumers are the ones who lose here, because farmers lose their livelihood, consumers lose their access to fresh fruits and vegetables.
For Tracy Richter, the focus is on getting this market through the reality of now and looking forward to later.
So hopefully by next April, everything will be more back to normal.
In Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, I'm Maya Rodriguez reporting.
All right, Maya, thank you. Now, the cost of groceries is climbing. New numbers from the Labor Department show an increase of 4.8% for store-bought food over the last year. The index for meat and eggs up 10%. Analysts expect those increases to continue. Now, Phil Lempert also says retailers will cut back on promotions, and it's partly because of the uncertainty.
We're starting to see some of them come back, but it's probably not going to be till January or February till we really see those circulars that we used to see that are loaded full of products that are on sale.
To save money in the meantime, Lempert recommends shopping around, try non-traditional sources like restaurants that have little stores. There's also discount grocery outlets. They have less variety, but could save you big. And go shopping with a list in hand. But have an open mind about trying other brands, other products. Despite anticipating double-digit price increases, Lempert says the U.S. still has the cheapest food supply in the world, and that is likely not to change. As boxing returns from the coronavirus, a fighter from New York City is getting ready to step back into the ring. Joe Mercieri showing us that fighter has been spending his time helping fight coronavirus.
Mikel LePierre usually trains at the famed Gleason's boxing gym in Brooklyn. But with gyms shutting down during the pandemic, the junior welterweight and his trainer Johan Guzman have moved their training outdoors. LePierre will be one of the first boxers back in the squared circle when he takes on Jose Pedraza out in Las Vegas on June 18th. Once he's in the bubble out in Vegas, he and his team will have to be tested for COVID-19 twice a week. And on fight night, there won't be any fans in the arena.
So now, opposed to millions of fans screaming and a lot going on, you can be more dialed into your corner and what you've been training for all these past weeks.
LePierre is no stranger to the coronavirus precautions. For more than a decade, the 35-year-old has worked as a data specialist at Mount Sinai Hospital. And during the pandemic, he was called up to the front lines to help set up COVID-19 units.
I was basically assisting the nursing department with all the COVID supplies and deliveries, getting the units set up.
The Brooklyn boxer said during the pandemic, he's been using the same mindset on the front lines that he uses in the ring.
No fear, going head on with the beast and attacking it full on. I handle every fight the same as I handle everyday struggles.
Now as he gets ready to return to the ring, he says he's taking that New York tough attitude out to the Strip.
Every time I get in the ring, I fight for New York, I fight for Brooklyn, and you don't want to let your city down, you don't want to let your neighborhood down, so that's why I just go out there and perform to the best of my ability.
Now, students around the world are connecting through music. Students are still taking music lessons with one teacher through online video chats. It made Natalie Rios think of bringing all her students together to play music. And it didn't stop there. She was able to organize a way for students to play with orchestras in other countries.
The arts are where our power is, and I think it will help us really rebound moving forward.
Now, as cool as this opportunity is, teachers, parents, and students say they cannot wait until they can return to class and physically play together. An elementary school class got creative to keep kids connected during the pandemic. How this teacher turned a disappointing setback into an exciting opportunity.
Easy, even Petey can do it.
Welcome back. When the pandemic forced schools to cancel in-person class, kids lost out on important social time. Chris Conti shows us one elementary class that found a way to keep connected through all the pressures of coronavirus. An unfamiliar silence has been lingering in the halls of schools across the country. Schools absent of students long before summer vacation began.
I wake up and check my email to see who has questions.
But third grade teacher Reed Clapp has learned he doesn't need a classroom to keep his lesson plans on schedule.
Thank you so much for being patient with us.
It's about this time in the year that Mr. Clapp and his students at Madison Creek Elementary School in Tennessee would be preparing for their end of the year show. Grammarella is known far and wide across the district. Every third grade kid wants to be in it. Typically, the satirical Cinderella-based show about grammar would be performed in the library. But because of the virus, that stage went dark. Like so many teachers across the country, Mr. Clapp had felt like he had the rug pulled out from underneath him. But that's when it hit him, a new play called Zoomerella. He threw out the old script, started from scratch, even had his kids audition on Zoom.
All right, let's start. It really has been one of the biggest challenges I've ever attempted.
3, 2.
Online rehearsals have come with their fair share of challenges.
No, you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself?
But as the end of the school year approached, things started coming together.
Instead of, saying, well, we're not going to have a play this year, we're saying, how can we still do something that's original, and how can we do something that they're proud of?
As for these 8- and 9-year-olds, rehearsals have offered structure, a way to manage the pressure of this pandemic so they don't feel as isolated.
The stuff that's been the hardest is actually getting your facial expressions when other people are talking and acting with your body.
And the kids have been learning too. 9-year-old Autumn plays Ella, the show's version of Cinderella.
How am I going to get into the Zoom room without a link or a password? I've learned how to problem solve.
Yes, they're 8 years old and they're 9 years old, but what we really want is when we're saying, hey, you need some light back there, and they're like, I don't have a light back there, and we're saying, what can you do to put light behind you?
After weeks of trial and error, they pulled off a final performance and streamed it across the internet. Mr. Clapp couldn't have been prouder.
It's their version of how their school year ended.
Who knew that a bunch of third graders could show the world that even in the middle of a pandemic, the show can go on?
It's a long story.
I'm Chris Conti reporting. All right, Chris, thank you. Now, a senior living facility is taking steps to help residents right now, from recreating famous works of art to margaritas delivered. The activity is keeping residents happy and healthy.
And Kim Crawford, part of Constellation Brands.
Welcome back. We like to end the rundown with stories that remind us of the good that is going on. And today it's a living facility in Arizona creating some cool activities to help make sure people don't feel isolated. Seniors there took part in the Getty Museum Challenge, where they recreated famous works of art by using simple things around the house. Some of the iconic arts they recreated include the Mona Lisa, Rosie the Riveter, and American Gothic.
My husband was perfect, and all he needed was a sport coat, and he put on a pair of glasses, and he was all set to go.
Another big hit at the living facility, mobile happy hour. Some people got margaritas delivered straight to their doors. Employees say there is a good reason behind all of this fun. Happy seniors are healthy seniors. And that's all the time we have today for Coronavirus The Rundown. We'll see you next time. I'm Chris Stewart. Thanks for joining us.